Okay, Poddies, exciting episode today with the amazing Allie Lefevere as a guest. Now, if you don't know Allie, her and her business partner, Lindsay, they own a really, really cool concept agency called Obedient Agency. And I really loved when Allie jumped into my inbox and was like, I would love to come and talk about having fun on your podcast, because fun is something that's so underrated, especially in the sales world. It's so interesting because you are either, or people once told me this, I say people, like the man, that invisible being. But I always remember growing up that people would always say, you're either funny or you're not. And I was never funny intentionally. And so it was really hard coming to the online business space because people have quite big personalities in the online business space. You know, people either have like this huge story and it's traumatic, or they're really funny, or they're like super polarizing, they're really controversial. And I wasn't really anything, right? When I came out of corporate, I was still corporate speak. I was still vanilla. I still just wanted to make sure that I didn't offend as many people as possible, and that I got enough information across for people to want to buy my product or my services. And so it was actually really hard to start bringing out my own personality. And because when you come from that corporate background, you start to think, well, big brands don't do that. You know, we don't see big brands letting loose with personality. We don't see big brands making mistakes or what we feel are mistakes. And actually, you know, the world itself has become quite a challenging place to be. You know, I'm not going to dive into the political landscape or the economical one, but it's become quite a challenge. There is so little now that is just fun, that just makes you laugh until your eyes hurt, you know. And it was so interesting because I recorded the episode with Allie today, and it's brilliant. You know, you will love the conversation if you're somebody who's really looking to inject more you into your business, if you're somebody who's really wanting to let out that sense of humor or that sarcastic style, or, you know, the dad jokes that keep me going on a daily basis, then you're going to love the conversation. And it was interesting as I was having the conversation with Allie, I was thinking about all the times that I've really laughed recently. And actually last night I had dinner with my mum. She came over and we had Chinese food, and it was great. My favorite Chinese food, just as an FYI, in case anybody's wondering, is sweet and sour chicken balls. Seriously, how can you go wrong with those? Like, they're just amazing. I digress. But we were sat there and we were talking about some memories from my childhood, and we were talking specifically about a birthday gift that she had once received from my dad. And at the time, she was very angry about this particular birthday gift because she had been saying for months that we needed a new Hoover. And so she'd been going on and on and on about it. And eventually, you know, comes around to her birthday and my dad brings out this huge box and he's bought her this Hoover. And I remember my mum being so angry about it. And we sat there last night and we were talking about it and reminiscing and just laughing until tears came out of both of our eyes, because the more you start to laugh, the more you start to have fun, the more contagious it is. And I think that that's something that we forget. When we spend time around negativity, we become negative. When we spend time having fun or trying to inject fun into things, or even some days, let's face it, just faking it, faking the fact that, you know, things are fun, it's also contagious for ourselves, for the people that we're around, for our audience. And I think that that's something that, you know, in all honesty, of late has been really lacking from the online space. It hasn't been as fun. It's been very heavy. The start to 2019 for a lot of people was like wading through treacle. And so I would 100% encourage you, if you have ever been worried about using humor or infusing humor into your brand, infusing more of your own style and who you are, and actually just making the world a little bit of a brighter place, to really listen to this episode and take away some of the amazing tips that Allie shares, and also start thinking about how you can build the brand that you want, as opposed to the brand that's just going to keep making the world tick on. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as I enjoyed having it. Let us know on social media how we did. Allie is prolific on Instagram. I'm not prolific, but I'm there. So please let us know if you have any key takeaways. Enjoy the conversation. Okay, Poddies, how exciting is this? It is finally sunny. in the UK, and I am lucky enough to be bringing Allie Lefevere onto the podcast today. Welcome, Allie.
Having me.
I'm so excited that you're here. Now, I'm excited about this for a couple of reasons, and everybody who kind of listens will know that I would love to think that I'm funny, but I'm not intentionally. Like, I'm the kind of person who cannot tell a joke. I'm not good at being intentionally funny. But when I'm not trying, I can be hysterical, which I think is it's kind of like most people. And so when I was looking at you coming onto the show and you were talking about how fun sells in business and how to make your brand stand out using humor, I was like, oh, this is going to be great. And I kind of imagined it being a little bit like a stand-up comedy show. Is that what we're in for?
No, I mean, I hope that I will entertain and dazzle you, but I did not come prepared with any shticks or jokes. So I'm sorry to disappoint if that's the act you were looking for.
So there you go, guys. So if you were expecting, Lee Evans or Russell Howard, that's not what we're going for today. We're going to go smart humor. But seriously, I'm really excited because this is something I think it's so necessary in the online space. Things have become very stale of late. The whole world has become kind of cookie cutter. And I talk about it quite often on the show because people do the same thing. They've all got the same branding photos. They've all got the same hair. They've all got the same font that they're using. They've all got the same story. And it's become very serious and it's become very stagnant and it's become kind of dull, quite frankly. And so it's really interesting for me that you've built this business around actually making things interesting and entertaining and how that's worked for your business. So how did you come to that idea or realization?
Yeah, well, first of all, I agree with everything you said, and that is what we are hoping to shift and change with our agency. But we came upon this idea that fun sells, like you had mentioned initially, and we were both in branding, myself and my business partner, in kind of in adjacent aspects of it. So I was doing more branding strategy, developing the brand's personality and how do we really identify a strong position to take in the market to really help you stand out from your competitive landscape. And my business partner, who's my best friend, we've been best friends for a very long time. She was a copywriter. And we would both talk about projects we were working on and always talk about the direction we would always take things is making things fun and entertaining and a bit offbeat and very unique, is because we found that when you can make people laugh, you make them feel something different than they're used to. It's surprising, it's delightful, it's unexpected, it draws out the best in your audience. And it's just something that's pretty hard to do. And so not a lot of people do it. And we found that it was so effective to use fun and humor and feel good tactics, but it just wasn't being done kind of at mass or at scale or just very commonly used. And so we decided, this is the thing we love the most. This is the thing that we think we're both great at. This is the thing that people aren't doing a lot of, and it works. Let's build an entire agency around this idea. And so for the past 3 years, when we joined forces, and for the past 3 years, we have been living to prove that fun sells, humor is humanizing, and you can just make people feel good and still make a sale. So that was kind of how we started.
I really like that because, as somebody who is in sales, the biggest question I get every single week is, sales is sleazy. How can I make it so that people don't think I'm selling them anything? And I always say to people, sales doesn't have to be. It can be whatever you want it to be. And I love that you guys are choosing to make it fun for people, that you're actively trying to kind of counter some of the stigma that the actual sales act has for customers.
Yeah, well, I think people are, customers are very smart. And they can see through the canned sales page. They can see through the contrived sales process. And once people feel like they're being sold to and they're in a system, I know myself personally, I immediately shut down to the process. Mm-hmm. And so there's something really beautiful about making the whole experience and every customer touch point fun and feel good and enjoyable and entertaining. And it becomes a give before you take one thing from them or you ask for one thing from them, because you're already giving them this amazing experience. You're giving them the opportunity to laugh and smile and to be entertained, which is very rare in the marketing world, in a way that's very authentic or that is natural and organic. And so it becomes a different type of energy exchange, is you're giving them something that draws out the best in who they are, that makes them feel good, that makes them enjoy this process. So once they're in the process, it doesn't feel like they're being sold to. And because they have already learned to know, like, and trust you, and they want to continue to engage with your brand and your product. So it's just yeah, it just changes the whole sales experience because it no longer has to feel like that icky, funky, contrived sales experience for folks.
And I think it's interesting because, I think when we're talking here about humor, there are going to be some people like, but I don't tell jokes well. And I don't, again, I laugh at my own jokes, and that is because they're hilarious. Other people just don't get them yet. But, we're not talking about kind of slapstick comedy here. Like, we're not talking about, okay, how can we make our audience, wet their proverbial pants every single time they open an email? Because at the same time, we have to be entertaining and, make people enjoy the process, but we also have to make sure that the information gets across. So how is that balance struck? Because that's a difficult line to walk.
Yeah, well, first of all, when we think of fun and humor, there is such a broad range that we think about. There is everything from very silly and goofy all the way to very dry or very bold or very direct or sarcastic or clever. There's a million different shades. And when we're thinking about how we're approaching a brand, we're taking into consideration a lot of different elements before we start to build out a brand's personality. We are looking at their competitive landscape. Like, what does their industry look like at its current state? What does their audience need to hear and feel and know? What are who are the people who are delivering this message? Is it a business that still has the founders very involved, or there are marketing heads that are very much in direct communication with the audience, or is it a brand where it's kind of Oz behind the curtain? And so there's a lot of different things we're taking into account. And more than anything, what we want to know is, what emotions do we need to evoke from your audience in order for them to resonate with your message? Because that really dictates the style of personality we develop for a brand. And so if we want people to feel, inspired, or we want people to feel energized, or we want people to feel called to action, or we want people to feel very endeared to a brand or feel like they were just punched in the gut. Like, those are all very different styles and tactics and tones that you take. And so it's a very smart, clever, nuanced process. And it's also not about telling the best joke per se, is how most people think. It's like set up punchline. It's about delighting your audience, surprising them, saying something different than they would anticipate, saying something that's relatable, that they can connect with, but that also takes them a little bit by surprise. And that's what makes the message memorable, is that you say something they can relate to, but also say it in a way that they've never heard before. And that's when it really lands. And so it is a very delicate process where we're continually shaping and evolving the message and really building out a full, constructed, fleshed out personality like we would for a person, right? So yeah, it's very fun.
It's so interesting because I look at and I follow very, very few people in the online space, but I followed a few people for years because they do exactly that. They're able to be informative and entertaining. And I think it's, striking that edutainment balance is something that's really interesting to me. And Ashley Amberger is somebody that I followed, and I've been fortunate enough to have Ash on the podcast. And she's somebody who is naturally just funny, but she's sarcastic funny. And so when I look at her brand versus perhaps, I don't know, Laura Bell Gray, who obviously is the talking talking shrimpy, which, I love. I think that's a great way to be referred to when I get her emails. But if I look at that and the two styles, they're both very different. They both make me laugh in different ways, and I would buy and have bought from both of them. But it's a different kind of personality that you see from each space. And actually, it's interesting because now that I'm thinking about it and I'm talking about those people, it's also interesting that both of those people are writers. They're people who've really honed that craft, and they've really looked and dug deep into who they are and how they want to build out that brand. Whereas if I look at, some of our bigger brands in the world, it can be really difficult to see how they use humor. I think probably the best examples are things like Wendy's Twitter feed. I don't know who they have that does customer service, but they are hilarious.
They better never fire that person because they are so crucial to their Twitter experience. It is amazing. We are enamored by their social media person.
I think they're amazing. And that's the thing. And I'm looking at you know, the bigger brands. And for years, we've not really seen fun come into brands. You know, we've seen some very serious growth, like brands like Nike or Apple, who, you know, it's very much focused on trends almost, or celebrity use and that kind of thing. But the social media accounts for fast food outlets over the years have given us, I think, a ton of entertainment. And it's interesting that, you know, people haven't yet come forward and said, well, how unprofessional. When somebody from Wendy's social media team savages somebody online, or when somebody from, you know, KFC turns the letters around to make very unfortunate abbreviations, people aren't saying, oh, that's so unprofessional. They're laughing and it's catching attention. Do you ever feel like people question the use of humor and think that it dulls or may dilute their professionalism? Is there like a fear around that for people?
Yeah, well, I love that question. I want to just really quick acknowledge two other things that you said. One, Lindsay, actually, my business partner, used to work with Ash, and she did a lot of the copy for her various programs.
Amazing.
So, love Ash, huge fan. The second thing I just wanted to quickly acknowledge is that, you know, we always think of humor and fun, or humor really, as like the truth having fun. And so I think you mentioned is the simultaneous need to both entertain and also educate. And the truth of your message and the education should never get lost to entertainment, right? So that's really important. But to address your question that you just asked, I think that any good copy should be a bit polarizing. I think that's what makes something really land. And what I mean by that is that not everyone has to get everything you say all the time. You have to be able to speak directly to your target and ideal audience. You have to be willing to have diehard fans, and you have to be willing to have people say, I don't quite get them, or they're not my people. Because if you can weed out the people who aren't for you, the people who are for you are going to rise up and really rally behind you. They're going to be your advocates. They're going to be the people who talk about you. They're going to be people who share on social media about you and post and repost what you've posted and all of those different elements. And so, yeah, you know, when we're building out brand personalities and we're developing your core position, like how do we position you in the market so you are unlike the rest of your competitors and you really rise to the surface, is we're taking all of that into consideration going, hey, this is a really unique, fun, different way to say this thing. And it may not resonate with everyone, but it's going to resonate with the people we care about. And that's what matters. And I think the problem is what, you know, a lot of brands are relying on big, huge budgets that if we just blast everyone everywhere, eventually we'll hit the right people. Well, a smaller business or a startup or a mid-sized business doesn't have the luxury of having a multi-million-dollar ad spend. And so every touch point really matters. And so you have to make those touch points count. So while larger brands can dilute their message and water down their message because Nike is Nike and everyone already knows Nike, the person who's an up and coming shoe brand has to come to the table with something fresh, different, and memorable. And so that's where there's such a huge need for them to cultivate something that is fresh and relevant in their industry, that can't rely on just, you know, boiling the ocean and dumping their message everywhere.
Do you have any favorite examples? You know, is there a brand who you see that has done this really well? Or
Yeah, the first one that pops in my head, it's not their current campaign, but the campaign they did before, Postmates. Are you good?
okay, yeah,
Okay. So Postmates did this really hilarious series of ad campaigns that they ran initially in New York, and I think that they moved to the LA market as well. But they were basically speaking to common truths everyone has in terms of when you want to be at home and you want to order food because you want to be a bit antisocial. And so they really capitalized and played on that. And so one of the first one that comes to mind was one campaign said, when you want pad see you without pad seeing anyone, we got you. Like, it was this idea that, like, we understand you, we got you covered. It's like, you want to be an introvert, you want to stay at home, you don't want to leave the couch, but you want this, you know, luxury or eclectic dining experience. Like, don't worry, we'll bring it right to you. So it was very relatable. It was very much playing on common truths. And it was just a really simple, entertaining, enjoyable campaign that got to the heart of what they did, but in a very memorable way.
I really like that. It's so interesting because in the UK, things can be very hit and miss when it comes to humor. We have a very interesting worldview, I think, on humor in the UK because the majority of people here are sarcastic and, you know, we're quite dry. and we're quite reserved on certain things. And I think one of the most fun campaigns that ever hit the screens here was an insurance company, or a comparison site, an insurance comparison site. They were called comparethemarket.com, or they are called comparethemarket.com. And insurance ads typically are quite dull. And what they decided to do was create these cartoon meerkats, and they created comparethemeerkat.com. And they actually brought in these furry toys that if you bought insurance through them, they would send you a meerkat in the post. And they created all these characters, and people went crazy for them, you know, and they were selling on eBay for like hundreds of pounds to get this toy worth about $5. But it's those kinds of things. And I think, you know, we forget about that in the online marketing space. We forget how viral those things can go. We forget how to challenge the status quo, because we are so used to all seeing the same thing over and over again. You know, I think, do you ever feel like there's going to be, I don't know, an influx, you know, if we talk about humor today, for example, and, you know, you guys are obviously going out there and talking about it publicly. And when somebody sets a trend, like you obviously have, other people will jump on that bandwagon and they're there. And so suddenly everyone's going to be fun. Do you ever think that having that influx will A, happen, and B, what will that do?
Well, I will say that I would be honored to be a part of a trend that enhances the way we experience marketing and branding. I think that so many brands market to people's fears and inadequacies and insecurities, or just don't do a good job of speaking to anyone at all. And so you're just bombarded with a million different messages that either make you feel like shit or don't make you feel anything. And so that, you know, I think that it would be great to start to see more of the feel good, fun, humorous stuff out into the world. The thing is, and we always say that I can't imagine a world where we're overrun by it, because it's really hard to do well. Mm-hmm. And I think that is often what we see is some people take a stab at it. And what often happens is they sometimes go to put a message out into the world, and then they get scared. And so they water it down and water it down and water it down. And it becomes this diluted version of this fun, interesting, entertaining, engaging concept that they had. So that's kind of one thing we see that happens a lot. Or two, they just don't, they don't make they still want to default back to, they're going to maybe go a little hard in the paint in one small area, but they're not willing to commit and really build their whole brand around this kind of new personality or new persona, or, a different tone. And so, I think it's just something that is tough to do well. That's why you don't see it done well that frequently. But I will say that I love that you mentioned the Compare the Meerkat campaign, because there is so much fun to be had in really traditionally, dry, unengaging, technical, boring industries. Like right now we're working with the University of Chicago, which is it's a very prestigious university in the States, but it's the untalked about tagline for them is where fun goes to die. It is not known for being notoriously fun or a riot to go to school there. So we're working on a whole research campaign for them. We're working with a private investigator. We just wrapped a project with a fertility clinic. So it's all these industries that can be, traditionally heavy to talk about, or dry, or uninteresting, or not engaging. And you can infuse relatable personality into those industries and those domains. And it really will touch and reach an audience in a way that is unexpected, because people just aren't used to it, and it's not familiar. And so it really does stand out. And so there is just so much room to really change the message out there if people are willing to take the risk.
I really like that. Also, where fun goes to die.
I know, it is. It's like their tagline that they never wanted.
That is not something. I mean, it's great that they're coming back from it, but that's a challenge. So I think, the thing is, we have a lot of people who are bloggers and coaches and consultants and service-based business owners listening, who will be listening to this going, oh my God, I want to do that. Because nobody wants to be Debbie Downer with their copy. Nobody wants to be consistently only selling scarcity and fear and pain and those kinds of things. What would be like your number one tip to help them move forward in some way? How can they build like these better relationships and infuse more fun, especially if they're worried about how their audience might take it? If you are in a traditional industry, it can be really hard to have fun in something like financial services or fertility or health and wellness, that, you know, those are quite challenging environments sometimes.
Yeah, well, I think one of the things I would recommend is that there's kind of there's a trend I see out there right now, and I want to kind of flag it because I think it's something to be mindful of, is that I see a lot in the coaching solopreneur space is contrived authenticity and contrived vulnerability. Is that they've gone through some seminar and work with some coach who have told them to share your story, share your story, share your story. And what happens is that it almost becomes a manipulated, contrived way to engage an audience. It doesn't feel like a connection. It feels like a very methodical, strategic way to take you down a path and to get your audience to like buy into you, and that you kind of hook them at the end and drag them forward. It doesn't feel like an energy exchange. It doesn't feel like a give. And I think that that's something that we're seeing a lot of, is that contrived authenticity, that contrived vulnerability. And that just doesn't feel good. And I think, you know, for us as an agency, like we can see through that and smell that a mile away. And I believe your audience can too. It might work initially, but I just don't think that that's a good long-term strategy. I think something that is a good long-term strategy is always communicate your benefits and not your features. And I know that that's less of a fun and humor thing, but something that people just often miss the mark on is that your features are the things that you do and the things that you offer. Your benefits are how the things that you do and offer, how they benefit your consumer. So all of your copy should be about them. Very small portion of it should be about you. How does what you do influence and affect their life? How does it make their life better? How is it going to meet their need or draw forward their desire? So like all of those things are really important. And so when we're thinking about fun and humor, we want to understand people's needs and desires and their fears and their concerns and their pushbacks, and all of those things are really important. But the difference is we don't prey on them. We understand them and solve for them. And so I think that that's just a really important thing to keep in mind, is that if you start to look at your copy and the words around, you know, surrounding your business, are you preying on people's insecurities? Are you capitalizing on that? Are you using it to your advantage? Or are you truly empathizing with and understanding them, relating to them, making them feel good in the process as you offer them a solution? And I think it takes you letting go of your own ego a little bit to get to that place and to be able to play with and have fun. Because I think when you play and have fun with someone, you are taking a bit more of a risk. But it's a risk that has a payoff and a reward, is you're willing to let go of all the me, and it becomes more of a you, and a give. So yeah, that was maybe a few different high level things that hopefully just are helpful.
I think that's great. And also, guys, you have to bear in mind how much of a pro Allie is here. Max decided to jump on my lap halfway through this amazing tip, and I want to dig into some bits, and then decided that he would get his foot hooked in the tie of my dress, couldn't get himself out, and yelped like I was breaking his legs. So there you go. That's real life.
I have a dog, so no one's judging here.
No, wait until we finished recording, then I really will do him some damage. And for all of you out there who think that would happen, that's not going to. Max is perfectly safe, and you know, he is more spoiled than I am. The dog eats better than I do when Sam is away. But no, I love what you shared there. I think, you know, especially this piece around contrived vulnerability, for me, that's something that I call pimping your pain for profit. Mm-hmm. And it makes us feel uncomfortable, and it puts your audience into the state of adrenaline that ultimately they can't cope with for very long. You know, they can't buy from you forever just because they pity you for something that happened to you. And you shouldn't really want people to do that. It's not a case of, oh no, you know, my car broke down, let me go and buy, or let me go and sell another thing to you because this thing happened. In actual fact, you know, it's really interesting because sales psychology teaches that people buy to get out of pain. So actually, it's ironic that a lot of people out there are using pain to sell to people, because effectively what you're doing is creating that loop, which is everything is painful, and it makes it harder for your audience to buy. Whereas when you're actually offsetting that with, here are the possibilities, or here's an uncomfortable situation, we understand it's uncomfortable, let's try and make it mainstream, let's try and do something about it, let's try and make it funny. It puts people into that cycle of, oh, there is a way to escape this. I might not have to feel like this forever. So actually it's a much smarter loop to be putting them into.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it shows people there is a hope and possibility and there is a way forward. And I think that to me is such a smarter strategy and such a smarter way to engage with your audience, because you're actually building out a long-term relationship. Because if you're just preying on, if your whole goal is to try to be the brand or business that fills the void of your consumer, and you do that by preying on their perceived inadequacies and the missing parts of who they are, you will never fill that empty hole, and at some point they will move on from you and look to seek saving from someone else, and so there's no loyalty there. But if you are building a relationship where you are giving and you are meeting their needs, and it is a mutual exchange and a give take, and you're building a relationship and you're engaging and having fun and playing with each other and drawing out the best parts of who one another is, then that's a relationship that lends to adoration and endearment and loyalty, and there's a shelf life there. And that's, I think, that's just a side effect of making someone feel good. You want to be around people that make you feel good. You don't want to be around brands that make you feel shitty for the long term. And so it's just the same way you would want to be around the fun, nice, engaging person that you meet at a party. Like, that's the person you want to spend the most time with.
Yeah, 100%. I love it. Thank you so much, Liz. This is so useful. And I think what you're doing, what you and Lindsay are doing, it really are creating waves in the industry. And I'm really excited about how it moves forward. I want to see more people having more fun with their copy and not being so worried about what if it doesn't take, like you were saying earlier, sometimes it's not going to, sometimes you're gonna pull the wrong joke, you're gonna pull the wrong string, and it's not going to work out. But if people want to know more about how they can inject that right balance between education and entertainment into their business and their copy and what they're doing in the world, where can they find you? Where's the best place for them to get some more Lindsay and Allie?
Yeah, you can find us at obedientagency.com. And we are everywhere on the interwebs at Obedient Agency. We're probably the most active on Instagram, so you can hang with us there.
See, everyone says this to me. They're like, oh, I'm so active on Instagram. And I'm like, I'm still posting pictures of my dog. I'm still at that stage.
Oh, that's a good start.
I love it. So there you go, guys. If you do want to learn more about injecting more fun into your business, please head over to obedientagency.com. Make sure you check it out. I really, really do think it's such a powerful sales tool. It's a really powerful proposition. And especially for those of you who are concerned about selling and it feeling sleazy or like a hard sell or painful for your audience, this is something, it's a different direction. It's something that's really refreshing in the market, and it's something that could do you a lot of favors. So thank you, Allie, for coming on. It's been amazing to have you. And for you guys, if you have enjoyed the episode, make sure that you hit up social media, even Instagram, even with me and my dog photos and other generic rubbish that's on there. Make sure you do that. Tag us and let us know what your key takeaway was from today. And I will see you in Monday's episode.